continues to investigate to find out if Alonzo may have been the victim of a hate crime.
We all went down to town. That's where the press conference was at. And we just really wanted to find him. We just really wanted to find him and bring some kind of light to that he's not just missing, that there may have been some foul play into it.
Hey everyone, my name is Nikita. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Welcome to my very first YouTube video. And welcome to the very first episode of Out of Sight, Out of Mind, a self-titled series where I talk about missing minorities from all backgrounds, whether Black, African, Asian, Latinx, you name it. My purpose of this series and this channel in general is to bring awareness to these disappearances as much as possible because the mainstream media won't. In today's episode, in the very first episode, we're going to be talking about the bizarre death and disappearance of Alonzo Brooks. So let's get into it. Alonzo Brooks was born on May 19th in the year 1980 into a biracial family with an African-American father whose name is Billy Brooks Sr. and a Mexican mother named Maria Ramirez. He was the youngest of 5 siblings. In total, his parents had 3 daughters and 2 sons. His biological sisters are named Demetria Leslie, and the other sister is named Felicia Brooks. Now, when I was doing research on this case, those were the only 2 sisters' names that I stumbled upon. It said in total his parents had 3 daughters, but the only other sister name that's ever mentioned is Alonzo's sister-in-law, and her name is Cindy Brooks. Alonzo also had an older brother, and his name is Billy Brooks Jr., named after their father, Billy Brooks Sr. So around this time, I want you all to keep in mind, this case actually takes place in the year 2004. And the Brooks family in 2004 resided in Topeka, Kansas for a little bit. Back in 2004, Topeka was a relatively small place in Kansas. When Billy Brooks Jr. turned 18, he actually moved to Gardner, Kansas. And not long after that, Alonzo moved to Gardner, Kansas to reside as well. But he moved there with his mom and not in with his brother. When described, Alonzo was described with the same characteristics almost every time. Alonzo Brooks was often described as being a sweetheart. He was always nice and polite to everyone, but at times he could be shy and reserved. And because everyone described him the same way, always being nice and polite to everyone he met, his brother Billy, when him and Alonzo were growing up together, Billy would try to toughen up Alonzo as much as he could because he knew how nice he was and he didn't want anyone to take advantage of his little brother. Their mom got on Billy a lot for that when they were growing up, but regardless, Billy tried to toughen Alonzo up anyway because, like I said, he didn't want anyone to run over the top of him or take advantage of him. In 2004, Alonzo had a small but pretty close group net of friends. His 3 main friends were Tyler Broward, Justin Sprague, and Daniel Fune. So let's get into the scene. Saturday, April 3rd, 2004. So it's Saturday night. Justin and Daniel actually heard about this party that was going on. They heard about it through the grapevine, and it was kind of a going away party for this guy that was going into the service. So whoever was throwing this guy the party wanted him to have one last big hurrah before he left. Now, Alonzo wasn't really a party person. Like I said earlier, at times he could be shy and reserved. But regardless, his friends persuaded him to go to the party anyway, which he did. Before I go into detail about this party, there are 3 important things that I need you all to listen to and keep in mind throughout the rest of this video. Number 1. A week before this party, Alonzo actually hurt his ankle in a basketball game. So he was limping around a little bit. Now, his limping wasn't so bad to the point where he couldn't go out, but it was definitely noticeable. The second thing is the party's location. The party was in Lacine, Kansas. And around this time, Alonzo resided in Gardner, Kansas. Lacine and Gardner are almost an hour apart. I looked it up. It's approximately 52 minutes. They're 52 minutes apart. So the party was almost an hour away from Alonzo's home. When I was looking up Lacine, it actually reminded me of Frostburg. When described, Lacine can be described as a complete ghost town. There's not much to see. There's not much to do. It's in the middle of nowhere, which is why it reminded me of Frostburg. My freshman year, when I first got there, people were describing it to me, oh, we're in the middle of nowhere, there's not much to do, and oh, we don't have this, we don't have that. So if you go to Frostburg, kind of like picture that. La Cine 2004 is kind of like Frostburg, in the middle of nowhere. The third thing I need you all to keep in mind is Alonzo Brooks was the only black person at this party. And there were also a few people at this party that were racist and, quite frankly, didn't mind displaying that they were racist. Didn't have a problem showing that they were racist at all. So please keep those three things in mind throughout the rest of this video. Continuing on that night, Alonzo actually rode with his friend Justin to the party. And his other friends were either riding behind him or on their way there with different people bringing them there. And even though Alonzo was shy, when they pulled up to the party, he was actually the complete opposite, which was actually surprising to Justin. Justin even said it was a little bit out of his character, but he was really happy because he knew they were going to have fun that night. When Justin and Alonzo pulled up to the party, Alonzo immediately jumped out the car and yelled out to the crowd, "Hey, who wants a beer?" And that's how people at the party began to interact with him. Even though people at this party, everyone was in their own groups, but Alonzo didn't mind joining them, and people didn't mind interacting with him once he said, "Hey, who wants a beer?" When Alonzo started to get comfortable with everyone, he started drinking more. He started talking to different people, and he even started playing some cards with people. That's how comfortable he was getting at this party. So not long after the party started, Alonzo's friend Daniel actually showed up. When he showed up, he caught up with Alonzo for a little bit, and then he went to go talk to some other people that he knew at the party. But when Daniel went back to catch up with Alonzo again, he saw that him and another guy were actually getting into some confrontation. So Daniel decided to step in and help. There was definitely an argument that took place between Alonzo and another guy that night. That's what we know for sure. But still, to this day, we don't really know what the argument was about. One big possibility that the family talks about is possibly, keep in mind, possibly, Alonzo and a girl were getting a little too friendly and a little too close with each other. Whether she was coming on to him or he was coming on to her, people at this party didn't like that, especially with, like I said, him being the only black guy there. So the girl was possibly taken, and the guy stepped to Alonzo about it. And yes, the N-word was thrown around multiple times at this party that night. Now, I'm black, so I could say the N-word, but YouTube has, guidelines, restrictions. So there's not a lot of things I can say on here. So that's why I say the N-word. So also keep in mind, like I said again, the N-word was thrown around multiple times during the party that night. Regardless of that little confrontation, Alonzo didn't let that ruin his fun. After Daniel separated Alonzo and the other guy, Alonzo went right back to partying, went right back to drinking and playing cards. He was not going to let that guy ruin his fun. So let's transition. Now we're an hour and a half into the party. So an hour and a half goes by. And Daniel actually hears about this other party from the guy that gave him a ride. The guy that gave him a ride, his name is Nicky. So when Nicky told him about the party, he told Alonzo that, hey, my ride's about to leave. We're going to this other party. And if you're a party person, you probably have a good idea in mind of, how that situation went down. One party, you hear about another one. You just want to party hop. You want to see, oh, is this jumping? Like, nah, let me see. Like, let me go to the other party. We can hop around. We might come back to this one, see what it's about. So you have a good idea in mind, what was going on at the time. Daniel remembers saying goodbye to Alonzo, remembers telling him that he's going to another party, and Daniel and Nicky left. Not long after Daniel left, like literally 30 to 45 minutes later, Alonzo's friend Tyler left the party as well. So now the only two people at this party are Justin and Alonzo. Now, Justin and Alonzo were both cigarette smokers. Justin asked Alonzo if he could bum a cigarette off of him, just assuming that he had some on him because they both smoked. When Justin found out that Alonzo didn't have any on him, he decided to go to the store and buy a pack of cigarettes, leaving Alonzo at this party alone. Alonzo did tell Justin if he was getting a pack of cigarettes to either get some for him too or they could share it. But regardless, Justin still left Alonzo at this party. Now, Justin would have came back to the party sooner. Like, he only wanted to get cigarettes and come right back. But this was their first time in Lassine. Prior to the party that night, none of the boys had ever heard about Lassine, Kansas. That's how small the town was. Justin didn't really know where he was going. So when he left the party, he made a wrong turn. And it actually ended up getting his car stuck in gravel roads. And because of this, Justin was gone from the party longer than he anticipated to be.
And I left to go get us cigarettes. Out of the driveway, I should have gone left and went right. Ended up getting lost on some gravel roads, getting my car stuck, and ended up about 30 minutes north of where I was supposed to be. And at that point, I made a phone call to another buddy of ours that was at the party, let him know to get a hold of Alonzo and tell him that I got lost. I could hear Alonzo talking shit in the background that I got lost and that I wasn't going to make it back, and for my friend Adam to give Zoe a ride home.
The following morning on April 4th, now someone had called Alonzo's house. We still to this day don't know who, but they just wanted to check to see if he was home. When his mom first answered the phone, she thought that was kind of strange because Alonzo told his mom where he was going, told his mom what he was going with, and told his mom that he would be back later on. So she pretty much just assumed that he probably came in when she was sleeping. So her response was, yeah, he should be home. After that phone call, Maria Ramirez decided to check it out herself. Her assumption, yet again, was he's home. He should be home. She just wanted to check anyway. She checked Alonzo's room. No Alonzo. Then she checked the entire house. And that's when it hit her that Alonzo never came back from the party. And once she realized this, Alonzo's disappearance started to spread like wildfire. So now I'm going to introduce Alonzo's childhood best friend, and his name is Rodney English. Growing up, obviously, Alonzo and Rodney were pretty close. When Rodney was interviewed, he talked about how him and Alonzo growing up would always play outside together. They would run up and down the street. They would play football, basketball. They would play this game called King of the Hill. Rodney even referred to Alonzo as like a brother to him. So you can imagine how he took the news when he found out Alonzo didn't come home from the party. Later on that day, all four of the boys, Justin, Tyler, Daniel, and Rodney, all drove down to Lassine where the party was, and they were determined to find Alonzo. But while they were searching, and they searched everywhere, they were looking everywhere for Alonzo. So they actually ended up crossing the street from the house of where the party was. And Rodney English was actually the one that stumbled across the hat that Alonzo was wearing at the party the night before. And he also stumbled across one of Alonzo's shoes. Right after these items were found, some random guy that lived in Lassine showed up out the blue and asked the gentleman to leave, which to me sounds really odd because they weren't hurting anyone, they weren't harming anyone, they weren't being excessively loud. They were just looking for Alonzo. But at that point, the boys knew that something wasn't right. Now, of course, Rodney English had his suspicions, especially because he wasn't at the party, so he doesn't even know what really happened. He didn't even know what took place. But he was definitely suspicious of Alonzo's friends, Justin, Tyler, and Daniel. Rodney even asked Justin, why would you come to the party with Alonzo and leave without him? Which is a very important message. Whoever's listening to this, who goes to parties, never leave anyone at a party alone, please. Whether they're sober, intoxicated, whether they're telling you someone else is picking them up, please never leave anyone at a party alone. So as you guys can imagine, even Alonzo's family knew that something wasn't right. They're like, where's Alonzo? This isn't like him. Where's my son, his mother thought. Where's my brother, his siblings thought. Where is Alonzo Brooks? He went to the party and never came back home. Alonzo Brooks' family went to the police to file a report. But keep in mind, like I said, this is 2004, and the police were making them wait 48 hours to file Alonzo missing. But Alonzo's brother, Billy Brooks, he wasn't having that. He wasn't waiting around for the police. So immediately the next day, Billy Brooks and his wife, Cindy Brooks, drove down to Lassen, just like Alonzo's friends, and started looking for Alonzo themselves. Now, Billy and his wife actually ended up getting in touch with the owner of the house where the party took place the night before. The owner's name has never been disclosed to the public. That's why I'm going to call him the owner. So when Billy and his wife were exploring the house, looking in it, looking around it, they thought it was strange of how empty it was. Cindy Brooks said it did not look like there was a party taking place the night before. Everything just looked so empty and so vacant. She was trying to visualize what happened to Alonzo, but she just couldn't get it out of her head how empty the house was. Now, Lassen is known to be a very racist town. And like I said earlier, one thing to keep in mind, 1 out of 3 things to keep in mind, is that Alonzo Brooks was the only black person at this party, and there were racist people at this party as well. Billy Brooks even said when him and Sydney got to the town, everyone there was giving him the look. And my black people, if you know what the look means, then you can imagine how uncomfortable they were being there. You could feel in the air that in Lassen, people of color weren't welcome. So Billy and his wife actually went to the police station in Lassen to see if they knew about anything, and they wanted to file a police report there. But of course, the police didn't want to hear what Billy and Sydney had to say. It's hard enough trying to get police to take missing black people seriously. So imagine in a town like Lassen, where everyone's attitudes towards people of color are the same, it's going to be even harder. Now I'm going to introduce another character. Well, another person, I should say. Deputy Paul Filler. Now, at this time, back in 2004, Paul Filler was a deputy that worked on Alonzo's case for a little bit. So Paul went to Lassen and checked out the house, just like everyone else did. But he also checked this creek. Now, this creek was directly behind the house of where the party took place the night before. Paul and his team claim that they walked around the creek and they checked the creek, but they reported back negative contact because Paul and his team didn't see anything that indicated that Alonzo was near the creek. So now we're going to make another transition. We're going to fast forward to Wednesday, April 7th. On this day, Alonzo Brooks' case actually gets picked up by the KBI, aka the Kansas Bureau of Investigation. Now, I'm not going to lie. The KBI did a lot more to find Alonzo Brooks than Paul and his team did. The KBI brought out cadaver dogs. They got the Kansas Highway Patrol to get them a helicopter to search for Alonzo above. They even got the actual government FBI to help search for Alonzo. The FBI joined the Alonzo Brooks case on April 10th. And then 2 days later, on April 12th, an underwater rescue team joined the search for Alonzo Brooks as well. But still, Alonzo wasn't found. Now, despite the FBI, the KBI, and the dive teams not finding Alonzo, the Brooks family was not giving up. They were constantly calling the police department. They were making sure that they did not stop searching for Alonzo. Billy claims that him and his family called the police department every single day for 3 weeks straight. And the deputy had the nerve to tell the Brooks family to lay off the phone calls. Had the nerve to tell them that they would call them whenever they hear something, that they were working on things. They were working on things. So now we're going to transition again. I know, keep up with me, but listen. So now a month goes by. It is now May 1st. And the department on May 1st is now giving the Brooks family the green light to come back to listen, bring as many people as they want to search for Alonzo. They waited an entire month to contact this family after they were constantly calling them for 3 weeks straight, telling them to lay off the phone calls, and they waited a month to say, okay, you all can come search now. On May 1st in the year 2004, a month after this party, a month after Alonzo Brooks has just disappeared out of thin air, on May 1st, the body of Alonzo Brooks was actually found. His body was found in the creek behind the house where the party was that night. The creek that Paul and his team claimed that they checked. The creek that the dive teams checked. So you mean to tell me that Alonzo Brooks' family found him in one day? Billy said they found his body within 30 minutes of searching. But the FBI and the KBI searched, I'm putting air quotes around searched, for a month. They couldn't find him. They found nothing. When the body of Alonzo Brooks was found, of course it had to go into examination to see what was his real cause of death. Alonzo Brooks' body was examined by forensic pathologist Dr. Eric Mitchell. But when Eric was examining his body, he couldn't find anything to pinpoint the actual cause of Alonzo's death. Eric Mitchell stated that there were no penetrating injuries to determine his cause of death. Now, if you don't know what penetrating injuries are, I actually had to look this up myself. It's basically injuries caused by a foreign object that damage the skin. An example of this are gunshot wounds and stab wounds. So we know Alonzo wasn't shot or stabbed. Eric Mitchell also determined that if Alonzo was beaten, he himself couldn't even really tell because there were no signs of his bones being damaged or broken. The only possibility of his death, and keep in mind, I say possibility because even Eric Mitchell, the pathologist, says this is a possibility, is that Alonzo Brooks might have been strangled. The reason why this is a possibility is because when Eric Mitchell was examining his body, he noticed that Alonzo's neck tissue was gone. But he also noticed that, because his body was out for so long, his decomposing body started to attract animals and insects, and they damaged his neck tissue. So Eric Mitchell just went with the fact that his neck tissue was gone because of animals and insects, and he just threw in strangulation as a possibility. Eric Mitchell still could not find any real evidence as to what really happened to Alonzo Brooks. So unfortunately, Alonzo Brooks' death was ruled as undetermined. Alonzo Brooks went missing and died under mysterious and undetermined circumstances in the year of 2004. And still, to this day, there are many, many theories as to what really happened to him after that party on April 3rd. His friends, Tyler, Justin, and Daniel, the friends that left him at the party, have their own theories. They do believe that Alonzo was jumped that night. They believe that the guy he was having a confrontation with in the beginning told his guys, and they waited to get Alonzo alone, and they jumped him. Now, his family believes that Alonzo Brooks' body was tampered with because it just doesn't make sense how I said earlier. They, quote unquote, searched for a month and they couldn't find him. They claimed they searched the creek. Creek and they couldn't find Alonzo, but his family found him in the creek within 30 minutes of searching. Billy Brooks, Alonzo's older brother, actually believes that Alonzo Brooks' body was held in a meat locker out in Lausanne. And after all the extensive searching was over, between the day he went missing, let's say April 4th, and when his family was invited back to search for him before May 1st, Billy Brooks believes that he was taken off the meat locker and placed in the creek where his body was found by his family. This is the last transition, y'all. I know I'm skipping some years, but this is how I'm trying to break it down. So now 15 years goes by. We're in March 2019, and the KBI releases a statement that breaks the Brooks' family heart.
This is a letter from the Kansas Bureau of Investigation. It says the KBI was one of the several law enforcement agencies who investigated the April 4th death of Alonzo Brooks. No evidence or information gained throughout the lengthy investigation indicated that Alonzo Brooks was the victim of a crime. For this reason, the investigation into his death was closed.
Now, that statement is actually the most recent update on the Alonzo Brooks' case. In the year 2020, Unsolved Mysteries, the most updated Unsolved Mysteries version on Netflix, actually dedicated an entire episode to Alonzo Brooks. And because of that episode, there is a possibility that they're going to reopen the case and figure out what really happened. Now, me personally, I do strongly believe, still to this day, the police know exactly what happened to Alonzo Brooks. I also believe that his killer or killers either have a close-knit relationship with the police, and that's how they were able to get away with this for so long, or because of the fact that everyone in LaSalle looks at Black people the same, they were able to cover it up. Alonzo Brooks was unfortunately the victim of a hate crime after that party on April 3rd in the year 2004. And I really do hope and pray that one day the Brooks family will get the closure they deserve. Someone will step up and admit they know what really happened to Alonzo, because he did not deserve to go out the way he did. So this actually concludes the very first episode of Out of Sight, Out of Mind. Thank you guys so much if you actually stuck around to the end of this video. I would love to hear your thoughts on what you all really think happened to Alonzo Brooks. So please leave your thoughts on what you think happened in the comment section down below. Also, please comment any cases that you all want me to do next. Specifically, well, mainly missing persons cases, disappearances, because those are ones that I'm really interested in. Like I said, from any minority background, please either comment down below, or you can even DM me on Instagram. I'll have that either in the title box up top or in the description box somewhere. If you really like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Share this video with anybody you know, your mother, your father, your cousin from down the street, please. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.